I would also love to record on my side.
It's going to a common pool, so you'll have access to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hello, Jones. How are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
Very well, sir.
Nice to hear from you.
Yes, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Okay. So I'll just spread it so that people can join.
Yes, Collins. Good morning. Sorry, Clophas.
Morning, Prof.
Yes, morning.
Morning,
Collins.
Morning.
Why are we confusing you with Collins?
Morning, really.
And no one is saying morning to me.
Morning, Bonnie. Morning, Jones.
Morning.
How are you,
Yes.
Prof?
Morning, everyone.
Morning. So you are waiting for everyone?
Spread it so that people join.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we'll get to start now. John, so how long do we have this link?
Oh no, this one we will have it for as long as we have the session.
Super. I think we will just get going so that those who are joining will find us progressing.
Excellent.
So mornings again.
Morning.
Faith, may I ask you to give us a short prayer? Faith, are you there?
Back. How did you know I was back here?
With technology, you can't hide.
You know, I'm multitasking. I'm in the kitchen. I'm in the food everywhere. Okay, let us pray. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, we come to you this morning, thanking you for the gift of life and thanking you for the gift of each and everyone represented here. We kindly request you to send us the Holy Spirit to enlighten our minds so that we may be able to grasp whatever we are being taught, and to our facilitators give them the grace that they may be able to send the information they have so that we can be able to grasp it. I ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. So thank you all professional colleagues for joining. Those of us from here in Kenya, those outside, I know the ICA has circulated this in the network, so we may have a few people joining us from outside Kenya. Really appreciate your time. I just want to quickly request that we all mute our mics, unless when you are speaking, to manage the background noise. Of course, how we will do this going forward is that we have a chat space that if you want to ask a question, you can post there. But you can also unmute your mic and just alert us so that if you want to ask any question, make any comment in the course of the presentation, so that we have a structure. So again, many thanks to Boniface who has and Collins who have worked hard to make this possible. Those who are joining us, please mute your mics. And you may also want to manage your video. I don't know if the host can mute all the mics.
Yes, he can.
As soon as we start, I'll mute.
Okay, super, yeah. So colleagues, I think we are clear on what this discussion is all about. We've seen what's happening around the world in light of COVID-19, ways of working, adjusting. We are working from home, many of us even now. And I think all this is raising a lot of expectation on us in the records and information professional. How do we also align? And one thing that is coming out clear is in terms of the digital space, people want to have access to information remotely. Do we have capabilities in place to facilitate this, considering all the security requirements and and everything around the digital working. And so this is really what this webinar is all about. It's the first amongst a series of many webinars, and it's our inaugural webinar. So I really want to thank Dr. Jones for getting time to join us and share with us his insights on how we can go around this. And I want to straight away welcome Dr. to speak to us. Of course, here is a mix of colleagues, professional colleagues from different sectors. I know you have a glimpse of the people who have registered. We should also be having some ICT officers from a number of institutions, I think including the judiciary. We know ICT officers are critical stakeholders for us, especially in matters technology. So again, this will be a session for us to build a connection and just get to learn and see how do we collaborate and move forward and get technology right in brief. Karibu Daktari.
Asante sana, thank you very much, Cleophas. And thank you all for really spending your morning time to come and discuss and share with us things to do about technology and the records management. My name's, those that don't know me, of course, I'll just repeat again, is Dr. Jones Lukose. I'm currently the Information Management Officer at the International Criminal Court, where I have worked for the longest time that I've ever worked anywhere in my life, which is close to 15 years. Initially, I thought that I would just come and lend my service for about 3 or 4 years or so. But I think it looks like I have stayed, and perhaps some say that I have overstayed. But all is good. Before the ICC, I used to also work at the Arusha Tribunal. And before then, I also worked in various areas supporting the United Nations in their efforts to increase accountability and transparency in Africa. So I think I will share today briefly about how we are going to have this session. I was informed that this session is likely to last about 1 hour, 30 minutes, which maybe we'll invite also some breaks and also have some discussion in it. But of course, we'll try to make sure that we stick to the brief that we've been given. The brief is to discuss around technology for records and information management. And this is one area that we'll spend a bit of time. I will refer a lot to my experience at the ICC, and also you will see initially a small video that paints the context to our whole discussion. So I'll spend about the first 8 minutes just to play a video. And with this video, it will give you a context of how records and information management is organized at the ICC. So I'll play the video just now. Okay, I'll share the video and hopefully you can see it on the screen.
Pardon?
ماذا كان يلبس؟
روغو تشاتي كي تشاتي ما كوا تيه نندو تيه انتيغا جنا انتيغا تشوبو نكي كومي كا جنا كا تشوبو جنا ngati ki pala. أرامتي على اليوتيوب كوياني.
Then I'll show you where the place is exactly.
Okay.
على الشجرة اللي موجودة هنا؟
إيه كتشايني كوم.
Yeah, just those trees just there.
جنا كأناني.
It says around this area.
Somewhere around here.
Oh, Ibra, come here. Look, there's something.
state your full name? Wilhelm Keitel.
For 60 years, temporary trials have been set up to deal with crimes that took place in conflicts. Those courts, from the Nuremberg trials onwards, proved to be effective. But once the verdicts and sentences had been handed down, the expertise and experience gained during the trials was dispersed and put to use in a variety of institutions. By 1998, it was clear that there was a need for a permanent court, and the international community banded together to call for the establishment of one that would provide a focus for justice in the 21st century. The Rome Statute was the result. The creation of the International Criminal Court emphasized the determination of the world community of nations to ensure that crimes against humanity, genocides, war crimes, or any other could not be committed with impunity. The court is the first of its kind in the world. Not only is its remit unique, but the way it operates is unique too. It is the world's first completely electronic court, and that means that evidence is provided to all parties, in and out of court, in an electronic form. An artifact, carefully recovered from the field, is dispatched securely to The Hague. The images are captured electronically from every angle and stored in the database created for the case. Documents of all kinds, whatever condition they happen to be in, are also digitized. Each and every pertinent document is scanned and then stored for immediate recovery whenever they are needed. The number of documents in a case might number in the hundreds of thousands, but they're all instantly available. Though the ICC storeroom looks to be very empty, the fact is that all documents are electronically available. So, the needs of justice can be more swiftly met without employing people to hunt down paper documents and then copy them every time they're requested. The court's technology serves to make proceedings move faster and increase the quality of justice for all those involved in a very cost-effective way. Each image, whether it's of a piece of paper or a weapon, can be examined in detail, or even put together to create a 3D view of the artifact. Digital records are sent from the field via a satellite link. The links between the field and the court are entirely secure and heavily encrypted, so that no evidence is ever compromised while in transit. Digital records are also delivered using hard and flash drives that have been guarded throughout their journey to The Hague. Video, film, and audio clips are digitized, translated, and, at the request of legal professionals, edited into clips for use in the court. It doesn't matter what format the material starts out in. The ICC have everything from domestic to broadcast technology, so that every material piece of evidence can be entered into the case. The humming heart of the ICC is a powerful example of what can be achieved using modern technology. These huge machines have a capacity that's measured in the tens of terabytes and is growing all the time. The court archives every piece of evidence and guarantees that it will be available and uncorrupted for at least a century. Each document, once it's been scanned into the system, is made available for keyword searches. And the documents that are to be used in court are also translated into English, French, the language of the defendant, and also the language of the victim, if it is different. That saves a lot of time when it comes to ensuring that all parties are aware of the charges, the evidence, and the proceedings. And the individual on trial can even have access to the evidence that's material to his or her case, before or during the trial. Legal teams also have access to a range of databases that cover everything from jurisprudence to case-by-case details and evidential material. The International Criminal Court is the only e-court in the world that not only conducts itself electronically during a trial, but also discloses its evidence in a totally electronic format to the defense. Evidence is immediately available once the trial has started, and that saves a lot of court time and manpower because documents, clips, and artifacts are immediately available on the screens in front of every member of the trial. And if a witness wants to illustrate a point graphically, then they can, and the marks that they make are immediately stored for future reference. The cross-referencing that the court does is intricate and exhaustive. Every item is tagged with a unique identifier and then entered into the database. And in court, that enables the prosecutor or defense to call any item by number, which the court team then call up instantly. Again, no copies, no delays, no carts of documents running up and down corridors. Whilst the proceedings take place, special transcription software provides a real-time transcript instantly, and it can be shared with all interested parties. So, the transcript appears almost instantly in English on the screens, and is then later made available in French, or if the case is conducted in French, then it happens the other way around. This saves a lot of time, labour, and paper. Broadcast technology, remotely controlled cameras, and feeds out to the wider world and the internet mean that the workings of the court are totally transparent. Witnesses who cannot attend the court can give their testimony live on screen from wherever they are. This enables either those who can't travel or those who are afraid to appear in person the chance to testify. The court can also mask the face of the witness or distort their voice so as to protect their identity. There is a 30-minute delay for all images that leave the building, which protects the integrity of witnesses and the evidence itself. If any changes need to be made to the content of the broadcast, then it can be done quickly so as not to compromise a case or someone's safety. The technology also saves time when it comes to differing levels of access authorization. So, if a document contains material that cannot be seen by certain individuals or groups, it can be electronically redacted. And as those professionals with higher levels of authorization access the document, the redaction is reduced accordingly. By using a range of technology, the court ensures that it can do its job quickly, efficiently, securely, and transparently. It can evolve as new methods appear, and that means the ICC is completely scalable and flexible. New capacity can be added as when it's needed, and new technology integrated into its operations with ease. The scalability of the court is vital, as it assures all those who rely on it that their need for justice will always be served. The International Criminal Court is working with a community of state parties to send out a strong message that if anyone commits a crime against humanity, a court exists that can bring them to justice.
All right. So I hope that you've all looked at the video and enjoyed seeing the work that we've been doing at the ICC. Now I'll just go straight into the slides. And I would ask that those that are joined in also to make sure that your mics are on mute, so that we can avoid getting feedback and noise into the session. So I'll just go straight to my slide and then be able to, we can discuss how we'll conduct this session. Let me share my slide. Let's give it a second or so to appear. Okay, excellent. Now, of course, the International Criminal Court really is would use it as a reference for our discussion, because I think it plays an important role in this discussion, in that a lot of the things that we'll be talking about, records information management, we'll also be talking about technology that is used for this purpose. These are areas that the ICC itself has experienced over the many years. In fact, ICC was established as an electronic court. So already from day one, they determined that they're going to conduct their operations in a digital fashion. Of course, there are problems with that, which we shall also discuss a little bit. But before I go into that, I would just like to say that this particular discussion is going to be conducted in 3 parts. The first part, we are going to discuss primarily about how we collect information. And then we have a break and maybe some questions. The second part, we are going to discuss how we value the information and how we organize it, how we sort of determine the value out of the data and also out of the records that are consumed, and how we use technology in that purpose. And then we also have a short discussion. And then the third and the final one, we'll discuss about how we publish and how we orchestrate the information out to the public, and how we use technology also to organize and run that activity. In conclusion, then we'll have a small discussion about the future of technology in records management. So I hope with that, that will really give us a small, a very good idea about the discussion today. Now, starting off, just to mention a little bit about what the information, the ICC is. ICC is an international court. It was established from the Rome Statute. A Rome Statute is a document that was established by member states in Rome and signed so that the world would have the first international criminal court. The video that I played gave a context into how the ICC was formed and why it was formed, and how it conducted a little bit of its operations using technology. But for you to understand, the court is really set up in three parts. There is the chambers, there is the registry, and there is the defense. So those are the three main organs of the court. Now the chambers is a group of judges and their staff. Then we have the registry, which is the administrative part of the court. And then we have the defense. Defense is an organ or the body that organizes the defense counsels and prepares their operations to defend the accused. And then one of very important organs I'll talk about also is the prosecutor. The prosecutor or the prosecution is an organ that is led by the prosecutor and her staff. So I might say that these four organs are sort of semi-autonomous. They're semi-autonomous in the fact that they conduct their operations independently from each other. So you have the chambers, which is led by the president of the court, constituted of the judges, legal officers, and their job is to decide and preside over the trial. They render decisions. Then you have the prosecutor. Of course, the prosecutor is the one that goes out and conducts the investigations and issues the warrants of arrests, and also conducts the prosecution activities in the trial phase. The registry is led by the registrar. The registrar is the principal administrative officer. So the registry is responsible for things such as human resources, finance, IT, logistics, and so on. Then we have the defense. Of course, the defense is a loose organ, I would say, in that the defense counsels come and go depending on what cases are active. So this is one of the most challenging areas also in terms of records and information management, because these defense counsel teams are mainly offsite teams. We support them and they also conduct the operations, but they are not staff of the court. So we shall discuss a little bit about how challenging serving them means and how we use technology to overcome the challenges. Now, the court itself is a little bit unique in that it also allows the victims to participate in the trial. Now, the victims are represented by legal counsels, and these legal counsels, of course, are organized also by special units within the registry whose responsibility is to go out and make sure that the victims are organized and they are well represented in the courtroom. So, of course, with this backdrop, it gives you a very nice idea into how the court operates. And at the same time, you can also be able to see the parallels in the various institutions, judicial institutions, which we have in Kenya at the moment. So it's sort of like bringing together the prosecutors, the judges and the courts, and then also the lawyers and the defense, all into one umbrella, and orchestrating the judicial activity in this fashion. So how did my journey start at the International Criminal Court as information officer? I remember in 2005, December 2005, I was, when I was hired, in fact, I was hired from Arusha. There's a team that visited Arusha, and I hosted them to show them around and show them how the ICTR at that time, the International Criminal Court for Tribunal for Rwanda, was conducting its operations. And at that time, the court was thinking, okay, how can we be able to infuse a little bit of technology and skills and insight into the affairs of the court? So they decided, okay, ICC will send a delegation to ICTR to see how ICTR is doing its operations in Arusha. So I hosted them for about a week, and we went around and we looked at all areas. Now, when they went back, they called me back and said, Jones, are you willing to come and also work for us here and establish the same mechanisms and the same strategies which you've applied at ICTR? I was hesitant, but at the end I said yes. And we moved together, my family moved all the way to the Netherlands to start the operations and start the work at the International Criminal Court. That was in 2005. Now, the first thing that happened to me when I landed, I was taken straight into the server room. Can you imagine a records officer going straight into the server room? Why? Because that morning I had just arrived. There was a big problem in that the setup of the records and information management system was faulty. The vendors that were hired to perform the task had run into some trouble, into some issues, technical issues. So on that morning, I was hired and really led right into the server room and said, "Wait, John, this is your first task. You're not even doing any induction. There have been no introductions and so on. Just go straight to the server room and help us to fix this problem." So, so I spent the whole day there with the teams, technical teams, trying to resolve the problem. And as soon as it was resolved, one of the technicians took me around to begin to induct me and let me meet some of the senior stakeholders. So I went into one of these judge's office. His door was open, and I thought, okay, this is interesting that we're coming in, the door is open, but I can hardly see any sign of movement in the office. So we threw the door and are wondering, now, is the judge in or is he not in? And peeping a little bit, we saw, yeah, actually the judge is in, but there's a shadow. We can't see whether he's moving. So in my heart was, really, is the judge asleep, or has something happened to him? How come he's so still? He doesn't even realize that we are there. Now, before I noticed, I had a loud voice saying, "Jones, please come in. I was actually waiting for you." Now, this was interesting, very interesting, because I thought actually he wasn't saying and he wasn't hearing. I thought maybe he was asleep. And my colleague, the technician, thought that perhaps he was ill and he needed to call for some medical help. But this judge called me and said, okay, Jones, please, I've been waiting for you. Come and sit down. On his desk, he had a beautiful computer covered with a covering. I don't know whether many of you still cover your computers with cover. I can't remember. I think the last time I saw a computer covered was almost 15 years ago with a nice computer covers. So his computer was covered on the desk and his desk was clean with some papers on top. So I was wondering, really, this is why is his computer covered? He saw that I was a bit perplexed. I said, Jones, are you wondering? I said, yes, why is your computer covered? I said, this is precisely why I asked to see you. So the judge said, you know, I have a big problem. So I said, Judge, what is the problem? So he opened the cover from the computer on his desk and he said, now this is precisely my problem. When I switch on this computer and what I see on the screen, there are too many buttons, too many icons. I said, okay, Judge, so how would you like us to help? So he said, I only want to see 3 buttons, three buttons. I only just want to see 3 buttons. And the technician that was with me opened his mouth and he started saying, Judge, you know, it's not possible. It's not possible because these computers are all standardized. Everybody has the same computer, you know, and they're all configured the same way. So I stepped on the guy's foot to shut the guy down. And why did I say? Because I wanted to tell him that, hey, this judge has something to say. Let's listen to him. So I asked the judge, okay, what is it that you like to say? So the judge confirmed, said, look, I only want to see 3 buttons. Now, can you guess what the first button that the judge wanted to see on his screen? I'll open up. Can you guess, anybody? Really?
Switch on.
Switch on. Okay, another one, another guess. Somebody else?
Evidence.
Okay, evidence, yes. Another one?
Top. Probably also wanted to see something on the screen and there is already a cover.
Yes, okay, one last one. I'll pick somebody. Nelson. Nelson is not here. Let me pick one more. Anybody else to say something, what the judge wanted to see, and then we move on. It shouldn't be too difficult. Ochieng? It's like an exam. No, it shouldn't be an exam. Let me give you the answer. So the judge said, I just 3. I just want to say three buttons, just 3 buttons. And what are these 3 buttons? I asked. So the first one, I want a button where I will share my decisions with my colleagues. I said, okay, that's fine. And what is the second button? You said the second button. I want the second button to be a place just for me where I can create my decisions, and I can go there and know that I've created and they're in one place. And so what is the third one? I thought maybe my colleagues said maybe the third one is delete, but far from it. Judges, the last thing that they want to do is to delete something. So that was not it. Now, the third button that this judge wanted was saying, I want a button that will help me when I click on it, I can find not just the decisions I've created, but also other decisions that my fellow judges have also created. So I said, oh, Judge, that is excellent. So he said, very good. Are you going to make it happen? Remember, this is now just my first day into the courtroom, into the ICCs. Are you going to make it happen? Now, I thought about it and said, Judge, now, if you're willing to work with us, we'll see what we can do to see this vision succeed. Now, if I was somebody else, I would have thought that perhaps maybe this judge is so computer illiterate and may need maybe some training or some exposure and so on. No, but I looked at it differently. I looked at it and said, look, the judge has painted a vision that perhaps could drive the way the court runs from this day onwards. Now, guess what? The judge had painted a three-pronged vision or strategy that underscored the entire information management vision for the court. At the end of the year, this judge ended up being the sponsor for information management program that started in 2006, going all the way to 2011. So you ask yourself, how could a seemingly computer illiterate judge end up being the sponsor of an IT and records management initiative at the ICC? It is because the judge was able to paint a vision in a very simple picture that would drive how technology is used, is adopted and implemented within the courtroom. So already this gives you the backdrop of the genesis of how technology has been adopted in the ICC for record and information management. Now, this particular presentation will look at three areas. Now, on the slide, you should see, I'm looking at, as I mentioned, I'm looking at information collection, information valuation, and information orchestration. And again, you can see strategically the three buttons. It underscores the vision that the judge painted many years ago that is still valuable and extremely useful for the court even today. So all our operations that regard record and information management are visualized with the frame and the eye of three buttons or three focal areas. How we collect, how we add value and enrich, how we collaborate and interact around the information and the data, and then how we orchestrate it, how we publish it, how we conduct, how we let the public consume it, and how we introduce stakeholders into the picture. So these are the three things that we are going to share today. And of course, as you look through it, you shall see it's heavy on technology. And I think your interest today is to see that these aspects of technology are well covered and shared. I'll just go straight into the first one, and then from there we can have a small discussion. Now, information collection. Of course, you've seen already from the video that we do collect information from all over the world. We are an institution that has a mandate to investigate crimes wherever they occur. The prosecutor has got a specific task to ensure that independently she can investigate in areas where member states or countries themselves have either failed or are unable to investigate. And as a result, you can see that we end up having all kinds of information coming in. Some of them come in form of servers, which are confiscated. Anything that stores data. We have paper records, we have artifacts, we have data that's coming in from the internet. We have information that is shared from other security organizations, for example, Interpol and so on. We have intermediaries in the field and agents in the field that also submit information. Then we also have the public themselves that also submit information through various statutes and rules which allow the public to submit information to the court. So there are various channels through which the court receives information, and as a result, you can see that our record information management, say, funnel or ingestion process requires that is able to ingest or receive information of different formats and different types. Videos, emails, paper records, exotic materials that perhaps maybe are encrypted stuff that comes from different areas. Even data that is stored on devices such as fridges and radios and so on. Anything that stores data and that makes that data useful for evidence is also looked at. So you ask yourself now, if we have no limit to how much data we receive, if we can receive data in various formats, how is it then can we use the tools that we know of as information managers, records managers, to be able to capture these records effectively, organize them, manage them, prepare them, make sure that we classify them, we index them, we apply taxonomies on top of them. This is a daunting task. This is a heavy task. We have terabytes and terabytes of information coming in every year. The speed at which this information is required to be processed is extremely high. Extremely high. In some cases, we even have a 48-hour turnaround period where we are required within that space of time to make sure that any public information that is received that passes through the trial phase or trial session is disclosed to the public as quickly as possible. We have even reduced it to 30 minutes in many cases where both the evidence provided and also the materials conducted through the trial phase are distributed out to the public. So in terms of the pressure to move things fast, it is very, very high. And we can only do it using technology. And not just technology, but also the skills and the processes which are quite advanced. We think they're advanced. We shall discuss a bit later why that also fails in the with the current scenarios which we are facing today in the pandemic. So you can see information is collected by the prosecutors. This is our primary source of information into the courtroom. That's the prosecutors and the investigators. And of course, there's also information that is coming from the victims, information that is coming from academic institutions. We share a lot with universities. They also send us a lot of data and a lot of information, which we also collect and use within as part of our judicial process. Of course, we see that you can't just capture everything. We have various tools we use at the beginning to collect information. Some of them are forensic tools, others data capture tools from the internet, others are mapping tools, others are digitizing tools. For example, we have scanners, which are also distributed across different organs and departments to help to digitize the paper records as quickly as possible as they come. We have instruments that allow us to speed up the process of certifying electronic or digital records, digital versions of records. And this is an important discussion because I saw some of the questions which were posed by you earlier on were related to the aspect of working in a hybrid fashion. How do you work when you have both the born digital and electronic digitized records and also paper records in the same business process or in the same operation in your organization? So we have the same. We had the same problem, and there are some areas where we had to be a bit creative and innovative. And of course, that innovation, of course, relies heavily on the independence and also the expertise of information and records people within the courtroom itself. So of course, I think the first innovation which I would like to share in closing off this collection area was that we needed a very tight interaction between records managers, the IT people, and the business teams. The business teams, which is the prosecutors, the judges, the defense teams, and so on. We had a very tight collaboration between the two. In particular, the records department that when I was hired, I was in the records section, was placed under a division we usually call the general services. The general services, which is sort of a division of the registry. Now, of course, this is a traditional place we've seen the records teams being placed in many instances. They are placed under a registry function or administrative function. Now, we had a number of issues in being able to be as efficient as possible because we needed access to both the IT tools and also the IT technicians and IT engineers. So the first real innovation that happened as a result of this was I talked to one of the senior IT heads of IT, and they said, okay, look, how can we make it more efficient? Can we maybe initiate an innovation, a structural innovation to merge the IT and the records teams into one unit, into one division or one section? And he liked the idea, and he presented the idea to stakeholders, and as a result, it was approved. So from I think 2007 and 2008, we initiated a merge of the records teams and the IT team so that we can all operate as one. What was the result of that? Now, the result is that we're able to support the information collection strategies and objective much more quicker and much more efficiently. Myself as information officer at that time, the title was records officer. I was now in charge of not just records teams, but also IT teams that were responsible for making sure that the information collection process works efficiently. Now, it made my life much, much easier. At the same time, we were able to respond much more faster and quickly to the needs of the business. Secondly, there are a lot of projects that were being established during this phase, projects to do with digitalization, projects to do with taxonomy, business classifications, and so on. A lot of projects. Projects to infuse technology, to introduce new new databases, and so on. So this strategy you're pulling together meant that now I found myself also being the project manager of such projects, which was very interesting because it provided me an early insight into how to organize and make sure the priorities of information management are instilled within the projects from day one. And it also provided an opportunity to intervene where we think that perhaps we're too IT-centric or technology-centric and not either business process-centric or human process-centric, or even looking at the standards of record information management. So it provided us an opportunity to address many of these issues at the very, very start. So that was the backdrop of the exercise, and we had merged already. We call this new section the information management section. Now, interesting, the information management section are composed of both records people and also IT people working together as one team. So I think that brings the end of the first part, information collection phase, and maybe just allow a couple of questions, maybe some discussion for 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can move on to the next stage, which is the information valuation. So at this point, I can open up for a discussion or some questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've unmuted. If you want to ask a question, you can just unmute yourself and ask a question, or I can unmute all and just raise up a hand, or I think let's just make it as informal as possible.
Colleagues, questions? Please manage the background if you are not talking.
So tumepewa tisho ID na pia ndio tupewa hizo.
Okay, you can unmute yourself as you speak. Just unmute so that we avoid the chatter. Okay, Maria, go ahead.
Morning, everybody, and morning, sir. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Maria from the State Department for Petroleum. My question is about the video that you saw, yeah? This information that you've collected, is there somewhere else other than the ICC where there is backup storage? That is what I wanted to find out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, no, because you see, it's the backup and disaster recovery operations are very important for any organization. Now, for the ICC, what we established at the very beginning was that we shall have backup centers or disaster recovery centers, and not just placed in one country, but spread in different places, in different countries. Now, I will not tell you exactly where they are because that is still confidential information. But just to underscore your question, yeah, it's very important. And what we did was established connections to not only different data centers spread across different countries, but also we engaged partnerships with also other international courts, other sister courts. So what we did was that we established these partnerships as a two-way data backup and storage service. So we store backups of their data, and they store backups of our data. Now, why is this important for disaster recovery purposes? For example, if by maybe an incident that we are unable to work in the ICC, it means that if the building perhaps is not available to us for one reason or the other, our operations can also be shifted to another court, and we can carry on working as normal as possible. Now, has this happened before? Yes, it has happened, not just for the ICC, but we've also supported other courts, especially in terms of crises and also in terms of the needed support. They've also used our courtrooms and facilities. Now, we were able to do that by hosting their data and making that data and that information available to the operation. So that's why you can see it's very, very important. It's a very good question, but it has also strategic implications. It's not just where backups are stored, but also it is where site operations can be recovered in terms of a crisis. And the crises can be many. For example, in Netherlands, we can have flooding because it's below sea level. There can be fires, there could be disasters, maybe explosions and so on that render the buildings inoperable, and which means that the court can move somewhere else and carry on working. Yeah. So thank you very much for that question. Any other question?
Thank you.
One can raise up the hand or you can unmute yourself and carry on. Just let me know who wants to speak.
Hello,
Yes.
John. I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Hello, John.
Yes, Prof. I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that very enlightening explanation of how you go about collecting information and data. Because the ICC is a legal entity and it will be dealing with a lot of legal issues, the battle is not so much on the information that is collected, but it's likely to focus on how reliable that information is. So I'm interested to know how the authentication process is done once the information has been collected, so that, you know, especially bearing in mind issues of content, context, and structure.
Thank you very much. Very good. Yeah, so I think I mentioned before that we have the obligation to collect information from all over the world in different formats, in different forms, in various volumes and magnitudes. Of course, this presents different challenges because you can imagine if you have a piece of evidence that goes into the courtroom in electronic form, and all of a sudden is challenged by maybe either defense or the prosecution or the lawyers, they challenge the authenticity of the particular piece of evidence. You want to be able to provide some process through which that piece of evidence can be examined. So there are various innovations or tools which we've put in place to allow this to happen. Now, the first part of it, of course, what we say is that we have established forensic procedure right at the entry point of the ingestion process. Now, this forensic procedure allows us to do several things. One, first of all, is curate the information so that we understand the nature of the content that is in the piece of data, the piece of information that is coming in. Now, we understand that there are many actors out there that may want to harm the operations of a court, such as ICC. So it's important to have this forensic activity right at the entrance so that we know exactly that the information that's collected is safe. Not only is it safe, but also it is in a process that can be consumed as evidence in the courtroom. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, if it's in a different format, for example, if it's in a paper format or audio format that is proprietary, how do we convert it and make sure that it is usable and acceptable in the judicial process? And then the third one is, for example, if it's a physical object, for example, even a paper record, for example, how do we make sure that if we digitize it, then we can use it within the judicial process in a manner that provides trust, confidentiality, and also integrity. So the first real, I think, procedural step which we did I instigated a procedure which we normally call this, it's a specific certification process that requires an information officer. Now, what this does is that we created a rule which says that any material that is received by the court will go through a process of conversion or digitization that is supervised by the information officer or a records officer. Now, that conversion process will ensure that the resultant digital record has the same evidentiary value as the originating record. Could be a paper record, could be a digital, could be a movie file. It could be any piece of object that can be digitized. Now, what this meant was that the rules specified that we as a court will only keep for the long term, for preservation purposes, for judicial purposes, for the long term, the digitized version. Now, that was quite a radical decision to make because at that time, not many organizations, institutions had the capacity or even the authority to instigate such measures. But we took upon ourselves because we realized that if we didn't do that, then we would have a problem. We would have a problem. So the first real, I think, procedural activity that we made at that time was to make sure that there's a policy in place for certifying the conversion of evidential material and any material that goes into our judicial process so that we can be able to safeguard the integrity. Now, this process of certifying is auditable. It's auditable. It also allows the parties, in case of any queries, the judges can allow for an inspection of the original material in case of any dispute. Now, this rarely happens. Why does it rarely happen? Because there is an independent professional person that sits as the intermediary to oversee the process of conversion and digitization. It's a very, very important aspect of it. Now, how are we able to do this in a manner that ensures operations work without interruptions? We organize ourselves into what we call decentralized records or information management teams embedded in the business units. What does that mean? It means that each team, each unit had what we call a designated information management or records management officer for each team, whether it's a defense team or a chambers team or any legal team or a registry team. Now, these officers were given more additional training and tools to be able to certify and coordinate the safeguarding and safekeeping of records that are coming within their care. And this allowed us to scale up the process of digital in such a manner that now we can safely say that our physical records are sort of transitory in nature. We only keep those physical records that are required, that have biometric or evidential needs. For example, if a witness signs a statement using a fingerprint, even though that is digitized, but for the duration of initial court session, the biometric evidence will be kept, but later on it will be disposed or returned back when the trial phase is over. But the digitized version will be kept as a permanent record of the court. Yeah. So, Prof, just in brief, there are many areas, but I think that's the most important one that I wanted to share, that really underscores an operational effort that involves professionals like ourselves, that is records officers, information officers, very early on in the stage to make sure that the information that is provided has evidentially value throughout the process.
Thank you very much. I think you have answered my question. Yeah.
Okay. One more question.
What are some of the guidelines? Hello?
Yeah.
What are some of the guidelines that the government of Kenya can put in place in the management of both paper-based and about digital records in the public sector?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I can perhaps hold it and keep it to the end because I think it covers also a little bit of what we want to share in the next 2 slides. All right, so thank you, man. Let me just carry on. And Cleophas, if you want to interject in terms of structure of the session, please do so. But I will carry on for the sake of time.
Yeah, let's just carry on for the sake of time. We have just a few minutes to go.
We have a few minutes to go, yes. How many minutes do we have?
20.
20, okay, good. So I'll go through this a bit quicker now. Now, let's just go straight to the information evaluation process. The information evaluation process for us is, we're looking at here the processes that enrich, add value to the information that is collected. Now, this process involves a lot of litigation activities that goes on within the courtroom. This is where we see now the legal teams interacting together in a judicial process. We see the prosecutor presenting her case. We see the various investigators also laying out their materials in the courtroom. We see the judges rendering decisions. We see victims participating in the courtroom. So there's a lot that is going on. People are consuming and adding value to the information that was already collected initially. Now, in this case, there's a lot that is going on. Some decisions are being made here. Decisions are being made towards the value information. Some of them are related to classification. How confidential is the information itself? Is it secret? Is it for public nature? Is it perhaps we have certain classes of information, we call them ex parte. For example, is it a communication just between the prosecutor and the defense? Or is it between the defense and the judges, for example? So there are various classes. There's a lot of classification going on at this stage. There's a lot of sharing of information going on at this stage. There's also a lot of internal collaboration between the teams at this stage. But most importantly, records are being enriched. Metadata is being added onto a lot of the information that is being processed. For example, decisions are being rendered with metadata tags that go automatically to the public. We see that the witnesses are being brought in. Some of them are protected witnesses, so the information is also protected, both on written and also video. So this aspect is a very big part of our job. Now, what do we normally do here? For us, we respond as officers that will be called on to give advice on the valuation of information. How long should it be kept? What is the value, evidential value of it? How should it be classified? Looking at different things, for example, like access control lists, being able to determine if a piece of record needs to be converted to a different format for either visualization in the courtroom and so on. So there's a lot that is going on here. Now, because things move so fast. I can give you an example. If we have a session this morning, within 30 minutes, that session is supposed to be publicized to the public. They're supposed to be able to follow. Victims are supposed to be able to follow within 30 minutes. Now, within 30 minutes, we should have already organized the interpretation and also organized translation of documents that needed to be submitted or shared with the public in this case. Now, because these operations require a lot of skilled personnel in between using various tools, it is now the role of the information managers to see that there is some governance applied over that, those pieces of information and the value that is being created on top. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about making sure that these skilled workers, that is the interpreters, the translators, the transcribers, the lawyers that are analyzing, the case managers, and so on, the various number of people that are participating in this area, that they have trust that the procedures and the processes they put in place allow them to proceed on, not only with using best practice ideas, but at the same time, something very special, which is trust and intuition. For me, as an information manager, it's impossible to curate and go through all the records that are being referenced at any one time to make sure that they are properly classified and so on. It's impossible. It's something that even if I wanted to do with all the tools possible, it is not possible. So we learned a lot of our abilities in being able to trust the skill sets of the experts that are in place, each with their own role. For example, I'm seen as an expert when it comes to information classification. So if I render an advice, it is regarded of high value. And in this regard, the lawyers do really rely on our advice from time to time. This helps to move the process forward. Otherwise, this is the place where things begin to get really, really shaky and faulty. Because a lot of our information is also born digital at this stage. There's a lot of creation of born digital records at this stage. Now, this means that the areas to do with training is very, very important. We issue training. We have trainings for businesses twice a month. We organize trainings twice a month. Now, why is it twice a month? We run twice a month classes because we know that technology is changing very fast, and information management practices need also to adapt. And at the same time, the business teams, many of them that come and go, need to have constant training to know how to classify, to know how to search, to know how to value the information that they are working with. So this takes a bit of effort. So this is one of the first big things at this stage: training, training, training. Very, very important. So part of our role or objective is to act as training officers or training advisors. So we train a lot of the information and records people, and they also do train others, and we make sure that the classes go on twice a week, and they're always full, these classes. So at this stage, the information is properly valued, classified, and so on. What next happens? The most important thing is that it goes back to conduct what it was supposed to do. For example, if an accused is brought to trial, of course it is of importance. It's one of the objectives, the primary objective of the court, to make sure that the justice is not only served, but is also seen to be served. So it's important that information is sent out and orchestrated to the public as quickly as possible. So again, this is one of the roles that we do play as information managers in the courtroom, to make sure that only public information is dispensed out to the public. Of course, we have a lot of confidential material. In fact, more than a half of all the information that we receive and process is confidential. But at least half of it is of public in nature. Now that it's public in nature, needs to be orchestrated and also publicized as quickly as possible. We use various tools and various techniques, but the most important one that we try to, principle that we try to do is that the classification happens or is supposed to happen right as early as possible, because we don't want to have a backlog towards the end of the funnel. We want to make sure that the information that is coming in is classified as early as possible. And how does that happen? We have to use a lot of automatic tools and a lot of procedures and policies that allow us to apply classification as early as possible, so that within 30 minutes, within 24 hours, 48 hours, translations of various decisions and documents are already available for the public through the website. We have linkages from the website all the way to our internal information management systems that publicize this information and data automatically. And of course, with the approval of an officer to make sure that only the public information goes out. So this is a very important aspect of information orchestration. In fact, for me, I think this is the primary area for a lot of our work. We spend a lot of time responding to demands from the public institutions, from university organizations that want to link directly to our internal repositories so that they can be able to consume data. For example, universities that are teaching law, for example, many of them have access to our jurisprudence directly. We have institutions that, organizations that collect case law information from various courts around the world. Also, these ones have access to our data also automatically. We have also journalists and news corporations. They also have access to our data automatically. So how does this come into play practically? Of course, it means that we as information managers are also at the forefront when it comes to projects such as the outreach. We're also at the forefront on projects such as determining the objective and the strategies for public websites and extranets, for example. We are always part and parcel of the team. In many cases, for example, myself, I am the project manager for the and supervise the contracts for the vendors that do hosting of our data. So you can see there's a synergy between this. Usually this is left, in many organizations, this is left to IT people. But I think in many cases, this is a mistake because the IT people are likely to look at only the IT and the financial aspects of contracts, but then look at the holistic picture when it comes to the full life cycle of information. That's why for us, we try to change this. The other aspect here is that we've organized in such a way that there is a constant reskilling and retooling so that information managers, records managers, and officers are at the forefront when it comes to technology. And this is extremely, extremely important. In many of our areas, the public are consuming data directly from devices, mobile phones, and so on. So it is imperative that we understand how, not only how the information is being consumed, but also in what various formats, what metadata is needed, how is it available, made available in an efficient way to those that want to consume. Either they're consuming by downloads or by consuming by integrating with our systems or consuming by either sharing on social media. That's all very important areas for us. Now, going through this, it's very interesting. I'll just say that what have I learned over the course of the period? I have learned that the most important thing is that the users who represent the business, who represent the various organs, the users are kings and queens. However, how hard we try to implement best practices from records management, from information management, and so on, all this management-ish and academic stuff, the users are always skeptical. And for us, we have legal users, the lawyers who are really, really keen on just doing their legal work. They don't want to be bothered by metadata, by records entry. They don't want to be hampered by having to centrally look for where they can classify and store their records. So that's a very interesting aspect. Our users now are really, really independent. Many of them are working offsite. You've seen with the pandemic now, all our staff are working from home, from the various countries they are in. They're all working from home, and they're used to using a myriad of devices, iPads, laptops, Macs, operating systems of various fashions, different ways, social media, and so on. So it's really, really a marketplace. How do we govern this? How do we ensure that we have a centralized repository that is useful? Or is the idea of a centralized repository even a concept that lasts as long as today? In my view, these are some of the questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And I've discovered that because of the power of the users, the power of the business, the operation itself, it's important that also the technology responds in a way. So I present this picture to you. It's a picture of sort of like a castle. It's a castle that is built around a society. So you see a castle that has a society that has walls around it and so on. It presents a vibrant community that is living out its life. Now it's important to notice that every person in this
Gosh, I'm not sure we are seeing the.
Oh, you're not seeing
picture.
the picture. Just a minute. Yeah, just hold on. Just hold on. Let me just check. Let me just reshare it. Maybe it's. Okay, I can see that. Okay, just a minute. Okay, yeah. Now you can see. There you go.
We got it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So you saw the previous one, which I talked about the users and the fact that they're in a sort of like marketplace. All right. So now let me just talk about the technology part of it. Now there's an assumption that the concept of a centralized EDRMS is feasible. What I've found out in the past many years is that this is a concept that now has become extinct. And I know that many of you are also in the process of rushing. Many of you are in the process of rushing to centralize, create centralized record information management systems, so with the hope that you'll convince your users to submit or to register or to really use this as their centralized repository. Now, over the years, we've tried strategies like this, but within the court, we've seen that this is not feasible going forward. So what has happened? So I wouldn't say that we have what we call a centralized document or records management system, or of course we have them. We have several. In fact, we have, I would say, we have a type of document management system. We have at least one type of document management system for every 10 staff. for every 10 staff, even though we have a master, what we call a master records and information management system. But we have so many others. We have SharePoints, we have other tools, we have those that store detainee information, we have those that store specialized data that comes perhaps from the images and the video. So we have a myriad of repositories. What happens then? How can we centralize? The question is, how can we centralize governance? How can we centralize governance? It means that our technology has to evolve. So, and this is where now we have also innovated a little bit and looking at technology that evolves so that the users are able to work as normally as possible in their various stations. But we maintain an overall governance over the top using technology. How does this technology work? Basically, we try to follow technology that interferes less with how the specialists work. So we want the lawyers to do their job. We want the translators to do their job. We want the interpreters to do their job. If they need specialized tools to do their job, for example, the auditor may need a specific auditing tool that collects and stores data. We also see that, for example, the translators may need translators may need specific transcribing tools that also temporarily store data. The question is, how do we as records managers, information managers, provide our expertise to oversee governance in such an aspect? So of course, then technology also has to increase. And for me, I think my idea or my argument is that I think we are at the stage where the concept of centralized repository is not feasible anymore, especially in the born digital world that includes the different, not just internet, but also different nets, different sources of information, different repository, different types of business activities. So this is an area that has a lot of debate, but I think for countries like Kenya and so on, I think we stand at a particularly interesting stage because we especially from Kenya, I think we are used to disruptive technology. We've been exposed to the mobile phone technology. We've been exposed to financial transactions over mobile phones. So our mindset is completely different from those in the Western world. We are likely to adopt technologies that have more value now and to the future than just by thinking ahead and just following what the Western countries are doing. So not expect that you'd want to buy or use the same system that ICC has used for the last 10 years. That would be a big mistake. I think it will be to look at what the lessons we have learned and say, okay, now if this is where ICC has reached in terms of its use of technology for record information management system, what has it discovered? What are the failures? And how can we now pick up from there? Not just try to follow, but try to advance. Skip some of the errors that we have made. And some of the areas where we've wasted a lot of resources and energy. Skip them and move to a higher level. So I think for me, my vision is that each records information manager officer now would be looking at reskilling themselves, retooling themselves, so that now we operate at a higher level. We operate at more at a governance level and not just looking at how do we centralize, classify information. We should be at the level where we're providing this at policy level, and the technology should help us now to be able to manage this policy so that they're executed across this castle, across this community. Now, I don't want to push, I'm not marketing technology in this forum today, but of course, if you want to make a follow-up to see exactly what is it that we're talking about, and especially those of you who are in the process of buying and looking for electronic records information management system, perhaps I can also give you advice offline to let you know that maybe there's certain areas you may need to look again deeper. And if you imagine 3 to 5 years from now, what is going to happen when we have another crisis? Right now we're in a crisis, a big crisis, a corona crisis. The traditional ways of doing records management doesn't work anymore in a crisis like this. And I can assure you that after this crisis, things will not be the same again. We'll need to rethink how we work. We'll need to rethink our roles as information managers and records officers. How have our roles changed? And then we need to move higher and not just be relegated to the basements or to the registries and so on. We need to provide value much higher in the system. So I think given the time that we have today, I didn't want to go too much over because then it'll be really, really a lot and I will not be able to get inspired. The idea is really to inspire you and to look forward, to encourage you, knowing that you are really at the stage where now you can leapfrog the errors which we have made and really push our agenda for governance forward in a meaningful way. So I'll allow some questions, some interactions here, and maybe perhaps some of the questions that you have raised in advance, I can also be able to answer at this stage. So thank you very much.
Yeah. I think, Doc, we see if we can pick on the floor. I know colleagues are sending a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll be able to answer all of them now. Maybe we'll figure out how do we respond to that. I'm sure we can have more follow-up sessions if you if you allow us.
I would love that. I would love that. Yes.
Yes. So that I know today it was just to set the high level thinking.
Yes.
Before now we start going into the details, and you will see on the questions there are a bit of more specific things that will need us time just to close them bit by bit. So let's just hear from the audience, please, if anyone has quick questions so that we can be able to wrap up in the next 10 minutes.
Good.
Anyone? Please just unmute. I don't know that the mics, just unmute and...
Yeah, they're unmuted. Guys, go ahead.
Kelvins?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, now I would just want to ask, how do you manage digital records? For example, SMSs that come from a third party, like for example, Safaricom, maybe they're managing, such data that come from a third party and yet they are digital, but they have actually originated from such a party. For example, if it is in a financial sector, we have messages that you've transacted with Safaricom from another circle. How do you manage it? Do you get the information and store it as your information, or you'll have to access it from the repository from the third party?
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. What we used to do before was the traditional way of ingesting this into our records and information management system. There could be SMS, there could be emails and so on. But you see, the problem with that is that they lose the context. And of course, you run into also different issues, especially when you come to records such as this. So the strategy we've adopted recently is to manage them in place. So we manage them in the systems to which they are better placed in. So we apply governance on top of that. For example, if we have, say, we use a complementarity rule where we certify trust between organizations and between units and teams. So if we receive a piece of information from, say, an external organization, it could be, like you say, Safaricom, whatever it is, we certify that Safaricom is using procedures that are perhaps close to best practice or acceptable. And once that certification be done and the process of ability to audit is possible, then we apply a trust mechanism. So it means that now we don't necessarily have to really duplicate what we are doing. What we have the concept of multiple repositories. With multiple repositories, and of course use a specific technology to apply governance on top to cross-check, to audit, to look at audit logs, look at entry logs. So we operate at a different level, at a higher level, which makes sure that we're not bogged down with the process of having to centralize information that loses context very, very quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If a question comes to mind, just call out. I think, Doc, I'll just wrap the things you've raised. One was the whole idea of painting a vision of technology, the 3 buttons. And I think this was triggered by the users. And I think this is where we'll really have to start as records people. What vision do we have for the technology, for organizations as we seek to integrate ICT in our work? You've raised the issue of the interaction between records managers, ICT, and the business people. Yeah. You've raised the issue, and that then connects the issue of strategic alignment. You've also, like in your case now, merging records manager together with the ICT. You have
also
raised...
just to add on to that, Cleophas, is that when we merged, we made the information manager the head of this team. So it's not just led by a technology man, but it's led by
the information
mind. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Moses.
Yeah, I wanted to know the difference between EDMS and Office 360, and how is it effective, this Office 360 compared to EDMS?
Yeah, that's one of the terrible areas I think one can really make serious mistakes actually. Of course, there's a big difference between the two. Vendors will always say that you can do the same. I mean, you can do the records management and functions in Office 365, for example. But this is not the argument. The argument is that there'll always be these tools. In fact, next year there'll be others. And there'll be more and more and more versions. The question is, how do we strategize ourselves so that we can still apply governance over all this? Any data that is stored in all this, we need to be able to provide governance over it. Not necessarily thinking about how do we copy information from all these different places and put in a centralized EDRMS. So the concept of EDRMS now, we need to rethink it. We need to look at it at a holistic level. It's not a tool, but it's a governance system placed across all these other repositories. So that's basically how I want to put it here.
And Doc, really that's even the whole spirit of this webinars, because part of the challenge we have, we get lost into the tools and not have the bigger picture, the wider vision of what is it that we're trying to achieve. And do we need one tool, or do we need an integration of a combination of tools, or do we even need the tool in the first place? Yeah. And I think this is what you are raising. So I know Moses has asked a specific question about, I think Office 365 is a specific tool. And I would suggest, again, this will be the subsequent discussions to try and look at more detail, because one of the things, Doc, you've raised is to having the right tools in place. And that involves a lot of other discussion on the how, which we will then be able to look at. I think you've also raised to us the need of training of users, yeah, and who, for us, we say our customers, because as records people, we exist to serve our organizations and our customers, to build, to train them. I think you've raised an interesting concept about centralized EDRMS or EDMS, whatever you want to call it, or centralized enterprise content management system, as a concept that may not be very feasible. And this is powerful for all of us too, because I know now we have efforts to build this kind of centralized applications around in Kenya and even around the continent. And I think it's a moment for us to reflect and see. I mean, if you hear what Kelvin is asking about mobile data, that would require a different tool. So you may realize if you buy the Case 360s and these other many vendor systems around, they may not help that capture data. And then you have a bit of an issue. And then you raise the thing which connects to this, that we have to look for technology that does not interfere, that interferes less with the working of our customers. Yeah. And that, I think, again, goes into the kind of technologies we take, the models we adopt, you know, how we roll out technology, because if it interferes with the life of our customers, they will not use it.
Definitely.
Then our relevance will be questioned and our value will be questioned.
Yeah.
You've also mentioned then along that we think of technologies that have more value now and in the future, and not just to follow what has been used. Because this again is what is happening. We will do case visits, site visits, see people have used our system for X number of years. Then we have a favorable report to adopt it. Then we bring it into environment, it's not working, and again, questions are raised. So I think again, we're challenging us there to rethink through what is it that we now, can we learn from the previous existing experiences and also focus ahead. I think you've raised again an issue just about the users are kings and queens. And I think this is where the 3 buttons started, that the judge was like a user. And so the work we are doing is for users, so we're going to listen to them. Then you've also raised traditional RM technology and ways are not working, so we have to leapfrog on the errors that have happened and learn for the how to improve on what has happened. And again, looking at the changes in the way of working now, I think it's important to reflect on what we need to do to improve on the traditional rules. And then lastly, you've emphasized on reskilling, retooling, so that as records managers, we can operate at higher levels. And that, I think, is the whole essence of what we are trying to do with these webinars. And we'll have a lot of them, especially around the area of digital records information, because really that is the space we are in now. So we'll have to do a lot of retooling and reskilling so that then we are aligned, relevant, and responsive to the needs of our users. Prof, I see you.
Yeah, I think you've done a very good summary of what Daktari has been able to communicate this morning. I think the other point to emphasize is that records managers and information managers generally must begin to reevaluate their roles and their positions, you know, in organizational business. And this means other than retooling and reskilling, you know, they also have to think outside the box. They need to push their sort of positions into the business entities so that, you know, this whole apathy and complaints about, you know, we are not recognized and so on, it's also partly because, you know, we have been too much focused on detail of things like classification and so on. While that is important, but then you see, you must also be able to push the records management agenda into the business units and so on. And I think that is one of the key messages that has come through. We must be able to demonstrate and you know, prove to organizations that our roles are much more fundamental than what they think they are, and also building partnerships with ICT and everyone else within the organization, so that we also occupy a front bench within the organizational setup. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Prof. So, colleagues, I know you had raised a number of questions. Dr. Jones will just review that and see how best we respond to them, whether we respond by way of a write-up or we can actually schedule for a follow-up. And we need to have a lot of this conversation around the digital records management so that we can be able to achieve all that we are aspiring, even, and all the insights that are being raised. Job?
Very good.
Job, you have? Okay. Super. So, Dr. your last closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for talking, allowing me to talk to you this morning. Of course, I'm very open any other time that you like me to share a bit in any of these areas. There's a lot to share, but I'm very open, and I'm very open for, even if we need to call this Karma Cafes, I think I'm open to that idea of frequently sharing as much as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you Thank you so much. Colleagues, Prof, would you want to say any last thing as our patron? And thank you for getting time. We know you've got a busy schedule.
Yeah, I think mine is basically to thank colleagues for sparing time to listen to Dr. Lukose. I think this is a very good start, and I think we should encourage it. I think we must agree business has, with COVID, business, the way of doing business has changed. And I think this is the best way to go.
Thank you. Again, apologies to those who didn't manage to log in. I think when we changed the links, there are a few people who have a bit of struggle. So as I did indicate, we look at the questions that we have raised and engage Daktari so that we figure out how we can be able to address them, either written response or subsequent forums.
Yeah.
And yes, we will get back to you with more details on subsequent webinars. We are keen on having many of these webinars as to retool, to reskill, and to recalibrate ourselves so that we are able to be responsive, as I did indicate, and take our rightful place in the as the world and the country gets the digital environment. I really thank you so much. Thanks again to Boniface and Collins, who have worked on the technicals to have this work. All the best, good day, and let's keep interacting.
Good day.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jones. And we welcome you for another one again.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know.
Okay.
By all means, yes. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Unaona Henry